Okay, we'll do Festal Menaion, Orthodox services, study carefully, 44 to 46, 68 to 80, and 81 to 87. So we'll start with 44 to 46. Okay. So the Vespers services. That's what we're doing here. So small Vespers. Vigil. Great Vespers with litany. So Vigil is here and throughout this volume. In the case of all the great feasts, we have assumed as our norm the observance of a vigil. It's the Slavonic tradition. This is in fact the standard practice in Russian churches, whether parochial or monastic. Among the Greeks, vigils are held at great feasts by certain monasteries, but not as a rule in the parishes. Okay, so vigil, great vespers with litany, matins, and first hour. So that's what happens during vigil. Great vespers with litany, matins, and first hour. Third and sixth hour. Okay, and liturgy, and then ninth hour. Oh, wait, there's more. If there is a vigil, small vespers are recited earlier in the afternoon. In practice, they are scarcely, if ever, said outside monasteries. The vigil begins with great vespers or great compline, so that's why it's written here. As the case may be, together with the litany. This is followed immediately by matins and then the first hour. So this is followed by matins and then the first hour. 3. Small compline and midnight office are not read. Okay, so if there is no vigil, small vespers are not read. 2. The great vespers with litany are celebrated on their own. In the morning, matins are sung, followed immediately by the first, third, and sixth hours, and the liturgy. According to the present practice in Greek parishes, the hours are omitted, and the liturgy follows at once upon matins. In Greek parishes, the hours are omitted, and the liturgy follows at once upon matins. Okay. So, interesting. So, it just goes straight. So, the hours are, you go straight from matins to liturgy in Greek. 3. Small compline in the midnight office are read as usual, but if great compline is preserved, small compline is not used. 2. Read immediately before Vespers. On 14th of September and the 6th of August, at the Vespers following, i.e. the second Vespers of the feast, a great Prokeimenon is sung, except on Saturday evenings. 3. Should these feasts fall on Sunday or Monday, the arrangements are different. Okay. B. Christmas and Theophany. Seems strange that it's just page 44 to 46. On the eve, royal hours, then the Typica. B. Great Vespers, Liturgy of St. Basil, Theophany, Great Blessing of the Waters. 2. Vigil, Great Compline with litany, matins, first hour, third and sixth hours, Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom, Theophany, the Great Blessing of the Waters, ninth hour. I don't understand. C. The Annunciation. Here the rules are of great complexity. Okay, let's see. For details, see pages 435 to 7. If the feast itself falls on a weekday in Lent, Tuesday to Friday inclusive, then the arrangements are thus. On the eve, Great Vespers, Liturgy of the Presanctified. 3. The Liturgy of the Presanctified is celebrated when the eve of the feast falls on Wednesday or Friday, also on certain other days. Vigil. Great Compline with Liddy, Matins, first hour, third, sixth, and ninth hours. Great Vespers, Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom. The Liturgy of the Presanctified. Okay, yeah, so that says page 435. So we'll just go over there just real quick. Oh, these are all the different ways that things can play out differently. The Annunciation of the Most Holy Theotokos and Ever Virgin Mary. Since the Feast of the Annunciation occurs during the Great Fast of Lent during the Easter week, the texts for the feast are combined with texts from the Triodian and Pentecostarian according to the rules for the day in question. Note that the Feast of the Annunciation is never transferred to another date, but is always to be celebrated on the 25th of March itself. 1. According to the modern Greek practice, when Good Friday or Holy Saturday falls on the 25th of March, the Feast of the Annunciation is transferred to Easter Day. Under present circumstances, however, in those Greek churches which observe the fixed feasts by the Gregorian, New Style calendar, the Annunciation always occurs before the Saturday of Lazarus. 2. The Liturgy of the Presanctified is also celebrated when the Thursday of the Great Canon coincides with the eve of the feast. Chrysostom is celebrated at the usual hour, not preceded by Vespers. Great Vespers are sung in the evening, forming part of the vigil service of the Sunday following. 3. If the Annunciation falls on a Sunday in Lent, on Saturday afternoon, 24th of March, small Vespers are sung. At the vigil, Great Vespers followed by Matins. Great Compline is not said. On Sunday, the 25th of March, the Liturgy of St. Basil not preceded by Great Vespers, which are sung later in the usual way. 4. If the Annunciation falls on a Monday in Lent, or on Monday in Holy Week, on Sunday afternoon, small Vespers are sung. At the vigil, Great Vespers, followed by Matins. Great Compline is not said. On Monday, the 25th of March, Great Vespers, followed by the Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom. 5. If the Annunciation falls on Tuesday or Wednesday in Holy Week, the order of services is as in 1 on the eve of the feast, 24th of March, and the Liturgy of the Presanctified follows Vespers. 6. If the Annunciation falls on Holy Thursday, the order of the service is the same as in 1 above, except that on the day of the feast, 25th of March, the Liturgy of St. Basil is used. On the eve of the feast, the 24th of March, the Liturgy of the Presanctified follows Vespers. 7. If the Annunciation falls on Good Friday, on the eve of the feast, Holy Thursday, Great Vespers are sung, followed by the Liturgy of St. Basil. Great Compline is not said. Matins of the feast are combined with the service of the 12 Gospels. On the day of the feast, the 25th of March, Great Vespers, followed by the Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom. 8. If the Annunciation falls on Holy Saturday, on the eve of the feast, Good Friday, Great Vespers are sung, but there is no liturgy. Great Compline is not said. Matins of the feast are combined with the service of the Epitaphios. On the day of the feast, the 25th of March, Great Vespers, followed by the Liturgy of St. Basil. 9. If the Annunciation falls on Easter Day, in the eve of the feast, Holy Saturday, Great Vespers are sung, followed by the Liturgy of St. Basil. Great Compline is not said. Matins of the feast are combined with the Matins of the Resurrection, followed by the Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom. 10. If the Annunciation falls on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday in Easter week, on the eve of the feast, small Vespers are sung. The vigil begins with Great Vespers, followed by Matins. Great Compline is not said. On the day of the feast, the Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom. You know, it's interesting. It's like the internal dynamics of the church year have an effect on one another in combination with where they fall during that year and what days different things fall on. And it's just very interesting that what enables the sorting out of this is a deep understanding of the dynamics of what the church values. And so each of these different ways of doing the service are the interaction of all the values of the church with themselves in order to condition how the church worships on this day or another, one day or another. So it's not arbitrary. And I think this is what I need to kind of dwell on, is that the order of the service is not arbitrary in the sense, in one sense it is arbitrary because it could be another way, technically. It has been other ways historically, especially in the early church. But it's not arbitrary in the sense that there is meaning behind everything that's done. Just as Alexander Schmemann said, that there's meaning in how time becomes infused with the worship of the uncreated God. And that's expressed in the care with which one takes to properly order the value of different elements of a service in different celebrations. And so the Annunciation is one quite complicated example because it exists within Lent, which is valued. The remembrance of Christ's suffering for 40 days, or fasting for 40 days in the wilderness, the remember of his passion and death, that is of utmost value. But the value of the Annunciation interacts with the value of the practice of Lent, of Great Lent. And one has to figure out how to both celebrate the beauty of the Incarnation while also observing the agony of the crucifixion, of Christ's diminishment for our sake. And so these two values interact with one another in different ways depending on which day of the week and which day of the year within Lent the service falls. This is probably a way of kind of simplifying in my mind why the church calendar is so complicated. It's complicated because what the church values has layers. What it calls us to value has layers of meaning, with the highest meaning being Christ himself, which is why his value trumps all else. It's why you don't kneel on Sundays, because the value of the resurrection trumps all. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, page 68 to 80. Back here. Okay, so 4. The plans of the services. Variable parts of the service, i.e., which change according to the feast or commemoration of the day or according to the tone of the week, are printed in capital letters. Oh, wow. Okay. Okay, so this is a way of sorting through services. It's funny, this is what I skipped over because it's hard for me to wrap my mind around the value of calendars, but they are valuable. And that'll probably be increasingly so. I'm currently studying for liturgical theology the readings for today.
Oh yeah, I got that for revised notes.
Yeah, well, oh man, yeah, the revised notes. I haven't even looked at the question yet. Maybe I should, but
it's due on the 10th.
Yeah, or the 11th, hopefully. I think it's the 11th.
I think it says the 10th. I think. That's what I'm thinking. I think so. I could have misread, but I'm pretty sure.
No, I mean this is week 4 lessons. Take notes for this week and use all your notes thus far to submit your revised note by October the 11th deadline.
Oh, okay.
But let me see. It might say something different on revised notes. Oh, it does say October 10th. Oh, but it says October 11th elsewhere. Remember, he kind of said it's like that. He's not super strict on the deadlines, unlike yeah. But I mean, and so the fact that it says 2 different things, 2 different places. I mean, we'll be able to talk to him, I guess, on Thursday. But I'm trying to wrap my mind around. So, like, I read the Schmemann reading for the Life of the World for this week, and just trying to like think about because a lot of what we're learning just feels really dry. It's like when do you celebrate one thing and not another thing? what trumps what, like how do you put a service together in like for Vespers or Orthros, like what parts do you include and not include on different feast days, and so it feels kind of like just kind of tedious, but I think that like especially the Shmeiman reading helps because really I think it like I'm trying to articulate it. It's kind of like there's a hierarchy of value, and everything is valued in the church. Like all time, all people exists within a hierarchy of value that has at the top the resurrection. And so for example, the Feast of the Annunciation exists during Lent, and so its celebration is super complicated, like because basically if it falls in any of like 10 or 12 different like days, like liturgically, it's celebrated differently. And like one perspective on that is like, well, why is it so complicated? Does it really need to be that complicated? And like why can't we just simplify it? Just make it more simple. But the reason is exactly that valuing of time and of creation, like of people and of things and of time, that you have to worship in a truthful way that is calibrated to the value of what your or you have to show homage in a truthful way, like in the hierarchy of values. So like if it because the Annunciation falls during Lent, you celebrate it differently depending on what day of the week it is. Like if it's Monday or Friday, you do pre-sanctified because because it's a fasting day, and so there's an element of commemoration of something that requires fasting in order to commemorate. If it falls on a Sunday or falls on Good Friday, or like there are all sorts of internal dynamics to the celebration of that service that where you're just trying to truthfully value things in time in the order in which they are valued. And so it's an act of care and worship to put things in their proper place and order. I don't know. That's what that I'm trying to figure out something that will motivate me basically to study these rubrics. And I think that's it. Like that you're, by looking carefully at the rubrics, you're actually, it's an act of devotion to the people that are being commemorated and to the hierarchy of values that the church has. What do you think?
Right. Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the in terms of studying the rubrics, it's just and there's a couple of things. One is that because there are movements, it is you're never going to be able to track them all, really. It's almost like keeping track of the day ordinarily in life. Like sometimes you wake up and you're like, what's today again? And you have to look at the calendar and see what day it is, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's right. And it's different, if it's like the next day is your anniversary, because you see theoretically, you're supposed to see your anniversary coming for a month out at least.
Yeah.
And you're aware of it coming, and you're preparing for it to come, right? And so, or your baby's due date or whatever. Yeah. These are things that stand out for preparation, and so you're kind of cognizant of that. But in, knowing what the preparation actually looks like may not manifest totally you may like read a little bit, read up a little bit in advance, and then eventually be like, okay, I think I know how this works, and then you do it when time comes for it.
Well, I think that ties into it. That like in the hierarchy of values, things that are more valuable or like more meaningful, or exist higher on the hierarchy of values, you remember more readily and you prepare for. Whereas other things, it's just like, okay, what days? Well, it's sort of ordinary time, but we're commemorating this person. That person deserves to be commemorated. Like, and he's important, but obviously if that commemoration falls on this day, like, then, well, in the internal dynamics of the church calendar year will demote that veneration, or kind of, put it in a larger context. And so it'll end up getting covered, but that's not because the church doesn't value this person, this saint or whatever, but because in the hierarchy of values, there's things that are more valuable.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. But I'm just, like, and so it's kind of like that. Like, like there are certain days where it's like, well, okay, well, what's the day again? But then there are other days it's like, well, to the extent that I'm participating in the life of worship of the church, I better remember those days, like the 12 feasts, like that kind of thing. Like, and it's like that you can almost track like the level of participation in the life of the church with how much like a person like if someone only knows about Pascha, it's like, okay, Pascha, like that's the one day, and they don't come to church for the rest of the church year except for on Pascha. That shows not a trivial, like it's not a meaningless level of devotion, actually. Like, they still come on Pascha. That still means something to them. And thus Christ still means something to them, even if not very much. And so like and so that hierarchy of values also manifests itself like in how we live and how we worship. And so the church as a whole values all of this and figures out how to adjudicate. The reason I was thinking about it, I was thinking about like AI and like the ability of like a machine learning algorithm to learn all of these details and then construct services for you. That would actually be like terrible in a way. Because what that would mean is that the church would be offloading its responsibility to take care and how it how it understands its own, like basically the rhythm or the ritual of having to figure out that hierarchy of values is itself valuable. And so if you remove that element and just kind of like, oh, I'm just going to create a machine learning algorithm like to do all that work for you, it's kind of like, well, there's actually value in learning the internal dynamics for yourself. There's actually a worshipful element to that, to learning how, like when things are and why they are and why certain things are celebrated rather than others at different times. It's kind of like the difference between like learning just like in mathematics, like learning an equation and learning why that equation works. Like learning that an equation works and like spits out an answer and you're like, okay, well I have the answer now. And learning why that equation works. Like there's a different level of care and devotion to mathematics that's represented in the depth of knowledge that you have of or the depth of care with which you treat, you understand the equation. That's just the thought I had. What do you think?
I think it is like worthwhile to learn, or like to have like more embodied as you go. I think sometimes it's something that just like happens over time. The longer you're in the church, the more you begin to absorb those things, and then the closer you are to the services, the easier it is, I think, to learn them. So if you're if you're at the canter stand or acting as an acolyte or whatever, like you are able to give your attention to the liturgy in the sense of like how the movements are happening, not just like the words that are being said.
So there's an element of time even there, like what you're saying is like there's a like the time you put in being there is a non-trivial like part of the learning process of the value. Like you can't just learn it from like looking at the rubrics.
Well, it's the same with anything else. Like if you give like a skill, if you say like I want to learn how to draw, and then you try drawing one time and you're like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna ever figure this out, and then you never do it again, then you're fulfilling your own prophecy. You're never gonna learn how to do it.